You are listening to Radio Maria Canada, a Catholic voice wherever you are. We now present the program Via Ruah, hosted by Anna Rivera.
Hi everyone, how's it going? Today we have a great guest from Campaign Life Coalition, and just as a reminder that our show is called Via Ruah, where we learn about God's breath being a tender secret that is created and upholds all life from conception to natural death. So Josie, how's it going? How are you today?
Thanks, Anna. I'm doing well, just super busy with preparations for the March for Life and with the election coming up. There's just 10,000 things happening at once.
And then can you just explain to us what Campaign Life Coalition is?
Yes. So I'm the Director of Education Advocacy for a pro-life organization called Campaign Life Coalition. We work at all levels of government, so municipal, provincial, and federal, seeking legal protection for all human life from conception to natural death.
And then your role, what is it, like what's your job specifically?
So it's hard to be specific about it because I do so much. I help out wherever I'm needed. I think regularly I'm often involved in the organization of Life Chain, the organization of the National March for Life. In between, you'll find me doing some writing. I take on different projects. For instance, I served as one of the principal investigators for a film from DunnMedia Entertainment called ROE Canada, The True North in a Post-Roe World. But as my title suggests, I'm really just trying to educate people on what the pro-life position is and then mobilize them to take action.
Beautiful. And then how did you get involved with Campaign Life Coalition, and how did you learn to, I guess, play different hats? Like, how did you learn to take initiative to be part of every single role that you are basically completing?
Great question. It wasn't easy. It wouldn't happen right away. I first started going to the National March for Life when I was in high school, in grade 9. And I slowly started learning more about the pro-life movement. I was trained in pro-life apologetics. I went to pro-life conferences. I was really blessed to have a pro-life club in my high school. And so the more I learned, the more confident I became that this was the right position. And the arguments were solid. And as my convictions grew, I felt this duty to share the pro-life argument with others because it was so obvious to me, the killing of innocent human beings is wrong. Why can't my classmates just see that? So I was able to benefit from some really amazing mentors. I first got involved with Halton Alive. Elia Hoffman is their executive director. So I interned for them and I was able to learn from her, and bless her, because I feel like I came in with like no skills whatsoever, and I learned how to work in an office. And then my first summer after my first year of university, I interned for Campaign Life Coalition. Jim Hughes was still the president then, and so I was able to learn a lot from him and from everyone at Campaign Life Coalition. So I was able to like pick up a lot of these necessary skills on the job, just through practice, going out there terrified, doing activism, and getting a little better each time, I hope.
I guess, yeah. So I have two follow-up questions. Can you explain to us what Halton Alive is? And then also James Hughes, you said?
Jim Hughes.
Jim Hughes. Can you explain?
But James.
Or James, like who he is and why he was so important in the involvement with CLC?
Yes. So Halton Alive is a local right to life organization focused on educational efforts. So that's in the Oakville, Burlington, Halton area. And Jim Hughes, I mean, his full name is James Hughes. He just goes by Jim. He's really like the father of the Canadian pro-life movement. He's been involved for decades, and so many of the people in the pro-life movement, they'll know him, they'll recognize him. He's been everywhere. So he still is involved with Campaign Life Coalition. He's just our president emeritus now.
But then was he the founder of Campaign Life Coalition? Or he was part of the process?
Yes. So there was a group of people who came together in, I think, Winnipeg in 1978. So I don't think he was the first president, but he was involved in the founding of the organization, and he did serve as president for a very long portion of the organization's history.
And then with that in mind, since you explained how you basically got involved with CLC, do you remember when you heard about abortion? And with that, because right now the laws with the elderly, with medical bills going through, we don't recognize the humanity of somebody that's in the hospital now, fortunately. So can you also explain to us when you heard about euthanasia existing in society, but also when abortion, you learned about it, that exists in society?
So I don't remember exactly when I first learned about abortion and euthanasia. I just know I must have been very young, because I do have a memory of being in grade 5. So I was around 11 at the time. And I just started learning about politics, and we had our MPP visit our school, and he was a Liberal MPP. And I remember my dad saying something about how the Liberals support abortion. And so I raised my hand to ask a question, and I was going to ask, like, do you support abortion, and do you support same-sex marriage? Because that was an issue at the time, way back when. And I was fully prepared, if he said he did, to tell him to get out, because I knew enough at the time that he shouldn't be speaking in a Catholic school if he supported abortion and same-sex marriage. And he gave a politician's answer. He hemmed and hawed about it. He was saying he's personally pro-life, and these are kind of controversial issues. Anyway, for me, I was like terrified to ask that. Terrified, like my hand was shaking. So like for me, that was good enough. Like I don't have to like take a stance.
You didn't have to debate.
Yes, yeah. But anyway, I knew at least about abortion at the time. And I can't say again when I first learned about euthanasia, but I also have a memory of talking to my friend, who's also my next door neighbor, and saying that, like, some people want to kill my mom because my mom is deaf. And so I just got this idea that, euthanasia meant killing people who are disabled. And, my mom has a disability, and that she is deaf. So again, that's not quite what euthanasia, I mean, obviously there's some element of, oh, they consented to it. But that was just my very simplified understanding as a child is, oh, euthanasia is about killing vulnerable people. And I know my mom is different, and that she could be targeted by something like this. Again, we're not to the point where like deaf people are being, killed against their will. But again, that was my very preliminary understanding of it at the time.
And then that was abortion. Do you remember when you heard about euthanasia?
Yeah, no. So that was my understanding of
around
euthanasia is the targeting of like people with disabilities. So not, I mean, I know it also applies to people who are ill and the elderly, but that was just like my first recollection of how I understood it at the time.
Okay. And so that really hit home with abortion because it was similar. It was like the same, essentially. That is very interesting. I mean, I didn't know that about your mother. That is actually very inspiring because, yeah, we see somebody that's disabled right now, people with Down syndrome. You name it, it's a good enough reason for the medical field to say that you should terminate this pregnancy. We actually had a guest last time, and she talked about how I think it was, yeah, her daughter. They were saying that she should terminate her pregnancy. She should definitely think about it. And now her daughter is like going to university. But yeah, that's just a plug for people to look at the other episode. And then, yeah, I guess going back to CLC and knowing all the hats you do, is there like a normal day that you could say, this is what I do on a normal daily basis? And then I would ask, do you ever, knowing that you have to persevere in this fight because a lot of people, I guess, don't know the reasons why somebody could be labeled as pro-life. Um, do you think, like from a day-to-day basis, do you think sometimes you could lose hope or not feel as motivated as, let's say, when you started pro-life work, you were motivated, and then now it's just like that journey? And I guess maybe talk about like how long you've been able to be part of the pro-life movement and work in this field.
That's a great question. It's one I've reflected upon a lot. To answer the first part, though, it is hard to say what a normal day looks like. It very much depends on the time of year. However, when I am going into the office, it's a lot of answering emails, answering phone calls, writing email blasts. And so I do try to do activism regularly, whether it be a choice chain, whether it be 40 Days for Life or something like that, because it really reminds me about why I'm doing a lot of this more like boring routine work. When I have these conversations with people on the street, and I'm reminded that this issue affects so many people personally and like really to their core, those are the people that I am working for when I, sit in front of my laptop and type something up. So that's like, I guess, the more predictable elements is there's always going to be plenty of like office work to do. But sometimes I have the privilege of going and speaking to a group of people, or, we have our National March for Life coming up, which is a very busy week for us in Ottawa. So there are plenty of exciting elements too. We just came back from the United Nations in New York, and I'm going to go back again for their Commission on Population and Development. So there's plenty of high points, but again, it's hard to say like, what is typical because it very much depends on what's going on at the time. As for persevering in the pro-life movement, I think I first started becoming active on a regular basis when I was a grade 9 student. I was between grade 11 and grade 12 when I first interned for Halton Alive. And then it was in 2015 when I interned for Campaign Life Coalition, which is a decade ago, which is crazy. But I started full-time in 2018. And when I first started in the pro-life movement, I had a lot of passion. And I really admire that quality in pro-life activists. But at some point, I think that passion needs to turn into perseverance. When I started in the pro-life movement, I was very naive. I was very optimistic. I just thought, again, if people hear the pro-life arguments, they will become pro-life. And that happens some of the time. But a lot of the time, as I learned, there's heart issues. There's reasons why the truth might be obstructed, and people have these personal experiences with abortion. And because of that, it might be hard for them just to simply, reason out the position. You need to establish a personal connection with them. And sometimes even when you establish a personal connection, this is the nature of sin. Jesus was the perfect teacher, and there were still some people who rejected his teachings. So especially in Canada, I think the pro-life movement faces so many challenges. And I think throughout my time in the pro-life movement, I've had to reorient my perspective and to see success in ways that the outside world looking in, wouldn't necessarily consider something success. Also really rejoicing in the small victories, like a single mind changed. And there might not even be a life on the line. It might just be someone who's like, oh yeah, you've convinced me I should be pro-life instead of pro-choice. And it's really hard to know like the ripple effect of that conversation, but just being able to lead someone towards the truth. And then even if they don't change their mind, hopefully being one person who leaves a pebble in their shoe so that they continue thinking about it. One thing I learned from Jim Hughes, our president emeritus, is really that this is the Lord's work. We're just his hands and feet. We're his servants. And a lot of our success is simply through being faithful. And so that's how my normal day is me getting up and me saying, Lord, give me the grace sufficient for today. And that's what Jim did. And that's what I try to do, is just, what can I do today? And so I think that a lot of the success in the Canadian pro-life movement is the fact that we haven't gone away. And if you'll indulge me briefly, again, as discouraging as things are for us here, I think they're even more discouraging out in Newfoundland, where my friend Ruth lives. The pro-life movement there has been decimated, sadly. But the abortion facility there, they have been very alarmed over the 40 Days for Life presence there, over the March for Life, over activism with abortion victim photography. Ruth has done choice chains there. And I think that they were so alarmed because even though the pro-life movement there is so small, and many of them are elderly, I think they're alarmed by the fact that they just haven't given up yet, and they just haven't gone away. And it terrifies them that they are seeing these young pro-life voices, even if they're few and far between. And I said, Ruth, we are like the cockroaches that won't die. And that is so scary to them. So I think really the fact that we don't give up, that we're still here, we still march, we still do life chain, we still do 40 Days for Life, that I think is something that pro-lifers everywhere should be really proud of, and for us to say, in spite of so much evil around us, we have stayed faithful. I think that's something that we need to hold on to, and that we need to continue carrying this torch.
Amazing. That was a beautiful answer. Just in that reminder that it is the Lord's work, because it's really easy for us to, I guess, make it about ourselves and say, Lord, it feels like I'm the only one here. It feels like I'm the only one that keeps being that annoying person that brings up abortion or brings up euthanasia, the only one. So it's very humbling to hear that from you, especially because I think, I've seen you in the pro-life movement. And I don't know if you remember when we met. I think we met at the March for Life in Washington because of your sister. And then you were telling me that you needed somebody for the McMaster Lifeline and McMaster, like the pro-life club that used to be there. And that's where I was challenged, because I guess part of me didn't want to do it because you are seen down upon. So going back to what you were saying, you were talking about the UN, and then you also talked about the March for Life. So can you explain to us why it's important and or a necessity for Camping Life Coalition to be at the United Nations? Sorry if we're saying UN, but UN is United Nations. And then also, what is the March for Life in Canada? What does that entail? And I guess how many years has that has been present? And then why should we march? Like, what is the reason that people should, maybe, hopefully that would be the challenge for everyone here that's listening, to maybe take a day off work and to come to the march?
Personally, thank you for telling that story. I can't actually remember when we met, because I feel like I've known you for so long. And we've seen each other over the years at so many different events. But thank you for answering the call, because you are doing terrific work currently with 40 Days for Life in Hamilton. And so I don't see you as being shy or like uneasy about this anymore. So the United Nations, it was created following World War II with the idea of preventing a human rights injustice, like the Holocaust, from ever happening again. So it had really noble aims, and it still does a lot of good work. Unfortunately, it's now also complicit in perpetrating the human rights injustice of abortion. And so we go there regularly, often for the Commission on the Status of Women and the Commission on Population Development, because that's where a lot of activists are pushing abortion. They do so under...
Question. Yeah. So then what's the difference between the woman and then the population one? Like, what would be
Yeah, so the UN has different commissions over the years, not just those two. They have ones, focused on security, on the environment. Those are just ones that are particularly relevant to our focus. So the one on the Commission on the Status of Women, again, they're doing some great things there. They're talking about forced marriages, they're talking about child marriages, they're talking about gender-based violence. They also talk a lot about abortion. Essentially, you have delegates from all over the world talking about how can we advance gender equality, which is, again, noble. Unfortunately, it has a lot of promotion of abortion at the same time as well. The Commission on Population and Development also has some good aims, but a lot of promotion of like contraception and abortion at the same time as well. So they just have different focuses. And they do this a lot under the umbrella of SRHR, or Sexual and Reproductive Health and Rights, which again might sound good, but it's really code for abortion, contraception, sterilization. So Campaign Life Coalition is one of a number of pro-life and pro-family groups that go to the UN to be that voice that defends the preborn human beings, that defends motherhood, that defends the family. We are in the minority at these events, even though a lot of countries actually share a position. A lot of the ones that have the biggest platform are the ones that are trying to like ram these things down our throat. So we go there essentially to be the dissenting voice. So we'll go to a lot of side events and we'll ask questions that raise the pro-life perspective. A lot of us are also able to talk to delegates because there's like a resolution document that's produced. So we want to try to have the resolution document be as non-controversial as possible. So we don't want to see terms like sexual and reproductive health and rights make it into the resolution document. So essentially that's why we're there, is, not only to counter, I think, a lot of the perception of the Canadian government, which is one of those voices that's really pushing abortion overseas. And we're like, we're Canadian and actually we disagree with what our government's doing. But even though we're a Canadian organization, of course, we're focused on saving the lives of the preborn babies here in our country. Of course, we're also concerned about babies worldwide, especially ones that end up being killed by Canadian tax dollars because our government is currently funding abortion overseas. And we don't want to see that. So we feel some sort of obligation to also be involved on the international stage. Now, in response to your question about the National March for Life, that was founded in 1998. Again, the purpose of Campaign Life Coalition is to advocate for the legal protection of all human beings from conception to natural death. So we oppose abortion and we oppose euthanasia, as well as anything that threatens the sanctity of life. And so if we are going to see the recriminalization of abortion or euthanasia, those are federal issues. And so even though we used to be headquartered in Toronto, we now go all the way to Ottawa, our nation's capital, because that's where Parliament is, and that's where our MPs are. And we march to bring attention that abortion and euthanasia are ongoing human rights injustices, and it's the responsibility of our MPs to end this injustice. So my pitch to people to come is, as you acknowledged, Anna, it can be really intimidating to be the person who, leads a pro-life club on campus. And we need those people to do that. But I think the beauty of the National March for Life is that not only, are you going there to have your voices heard, on Parliament Hill, but you're surrounded by thousands of other pro-lifers. And it's like the one time of the year that I feel like I am not, alone or like in a small group or like, the annoying voice. I am so joyful. I'm so filled with hope. It is so inspiring and it's rejuvenating. So if you're discouraged, then come to the National March for Life. If you're like, I don't know how to get involved, in the pro-life movement, come to the march, hold a sign, and I promise you, you won't feel at least that intimidated because you're marching with thousands of other people. So just being able to hear the testimonies, being able to see other people your age who are as passionate about these issues as you are, who share your values, I feel like it's really necessary to do at least once per year. And again, it sends a message to our parliamentarians that we're not going away and we will continue to march until we see the end of these evils.
And then can you tell us which dates, like when it's happening?
Yes, that's an important question. It is on Thursday, May 8th this year, but we also have events in the surrounding days. So definitely at least take one day off work for the march. If it means, waking up early so you can take a bus or you can drive over to Ottawa, please do that. But if you have extra time or you want to make a trip out of it, we do have events in the surrounding days. We do a coffee house on the Tuesday evening. If you're into, music, especially Christian music, focus on life issues. The following day, we have a mass and a candlelight vigil, which is a lot more prayerful in focus. The National March for Life is always obviously a very political event, but the candlelight vigil is an hour of, again, praise and worship music, testimonies, prayer, reflection. So it's a great way to get into the right mindset, I think, for the following day, where we, again, have prayer services, masses, our rally on the Hill, our march through the streets of Ottawa, and then testimonies from posted board of men and women who are part of the Silent No More awareness campaign, followed by a closing prayer service. And then we have our Pro-Life Expo and our Rose Dinner Gala in the Ottawa Conference and Event Center. Our speaker this year is Emily Stimson Chapman, who's going to be speaking about her own experience of infertility, adopting children, and why she rejected in vitro fertilization, which is another attack on the sanctity of life that has sprung up. And that really fits well into our theme this year, which I'm just realizing I haven't mentioned, which is protection at conception. And then the following day, we'll have both a youth summit and a summit for adults, our leaders summit, which will actually include an election debrief this year. So there's plenty that happens during the week, but if you can only take off one day, at least take off the day for the National March for Life.
Thursday, May 8th, guys. You guys heard it. You guys heard it on here. I hope to go. I hope to also take a youth bus with Hamilton Right to Life. We are working on that as we are speaking. And do we have a law in Canada for abortion?
No. That's a great question, because a lot of people think we do, but we do not.
And then we're one of the, North Korea, China, and Canada are the only ones, developed countries, that do not have a law on abortion.
Well, actually, I found out recently that apparently North Korea does have a law. It just hasn't been enforced over the years, but now they're concerned about their birth rate. So it sounds, you never know what's happening in North Korea, but it sounds like they are more concerned about that. They still do forced abortions. They're still terrible. Same thing happens in China. They still do forced abortions, but they do actually, at least in a couple of provinces, have bans against sex-selective abortions, which we cannot say is the case in Canada. Our parliamentarians specifically rejected a bill that would criminalize sex-selective abortions. So really, you could say that we're worse.
When did this happen? Was it recent?
The
Sex
vote on
selective.
sex-selective abortions? It was a few years ago. I can't say exactly what year. I think it happened sometime during COVID. So my guess would be
Sally, we don't learn about these things. It's never out in the open, unfortunately, and we also have to find alternative ways where we can find out what's going on. Especially, I think even COC, I think what's his name, Mr. Gunnarsson sent out an email saying that they want to take away the funding for religious groups. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because we have a lot of Catholic listeners that I think would be interested in hearing about this.
Yeah. So this was actually, it's related to a campaign promise of the Liberals from 2021, when they said that they would strip crisis pregnancy centers of their charitable status for disinformation and misinformation, which is completely false. They just don't like that these crisis pregnancy centers won't refer women to abortion. And so the Liberals did kind of try to implement that. They said that if you don't have, a clear indication that you don't refer for abortion, then you could have your charitable status stripped. The fact is the majority of crisis pregnancy centers do have disclaimers on their website saying we don't refer for abortion. But this came up from a recommendation. There's like hundreds of different recommendations from like the finance committee about the new budget. And a couple of those recommendations were strip pro-life organizations of their charitable status, and then strip any charity whose purpose is like the promotion of religion. So basically any church or mosque or temple or whatever of their charitable tax status, meaning that they wouldn't be able to give out tax receipts. As the law is currently, if a charity has their tax status revoked, then they have to like pay a penalty that's like equivalent to all of their assets. So it's unclear if that would be the case with, churches today. Anyway, regardless, either way, it's a major threat. Something like 40% of existing charities are religious. And this doesn't just affect pro-life work, this affects, religious charities that like feed the homeless, that run food banks, that do really important work that everyone agrees is really valuable. So the hope is that no matter who gets elected on April 28th, that they realize that this is a huge political liability, and they will get so much pushback if they try to propose this in the next budget. But we can't just say, oh, this will never happen. We really need to be vocal about it and like make it clear we won't stand for this. Just because a charity is religious doesn't mean it's not a charity. So Campaign Life Coalition has a petition right now, but I would really encourage people to, take the next step, and, whoever is elected your MP on April 28th, also make it a point to contact them right away. Be like, hi, I live in your riding. My name is so-and-so. I'm pro-life. By the way, I was really concerned about this proposal to strip religious charities of their charitable tax or status, and I hope that you would oppose such a recommendation.
Beautiful. And then I guess people can go on the website and figure out also who is running. I guess right now, because of the election coming up in April, then people have to inform themselves who they want to vote for. And then I guess it's on the CLC website.
Yes. So you can visit the CLC website, campaignlifecoalition.com. You can input your postal code to find out who your elected representatives are and who the candidates running are. But you could also go to voteprolife.ca. That really has a list of all of the pro-life candidates. I do need to note that because of the riding redivision, we're presently working on updating the postal code lookup. So it is possible that if you live in a newly established riding, that you might just have to look at the list of all pro-life candidates in your province or all pro-life candidates in Canada to find out who's running in your riding. But again, we're in the midst of updating that.
Beautiful. And then with this in mind, we know that legality really matters. And even if, let's say people like to say the argument that even if abortion was illegal, abortion will still exist. Do you have any comments on that?
I think that they're right in that it would still exist in the same way that murder is illegal and it still exists. But I do think we have a lot of reason and a lot of evidence to support that the number of abortions would decline drastically. As we saw when abortion was like first legally permitted, is that the number of abortions shot up. The law has what we call an educative effect, meaning that because something is legal, or at least not illegal, people think, oh, it's okay, or it's good to do, it's fine. If it wasn't, then it would be illegal, right? So if abortion was criminalized, you would see a whole lot of people who are just like, yes, I'm not going to get an abortion because it is illegal. I don't want to risk, any criminal sanctions. Also, I'm getting this idea that this is not something that is okay to do, so I will not get an abortion. But also there's an additional effect, which is you normalize childbearing, and workplaces are forced to accommodate in a way that they aren't forced to accommodate right now, because a lot of them just have this attitude of, oh, well, if you have a kid, that's your choice and it's your responsibility to make all of the accommodations. And we really need to be changing that culture and saying, actually workplaces and, schools, universities, they need to be accommodating towards motherhood. And part of the way you force a change in culture is by saying, no, abortions aren't allowed anymore, and motherhood is good. It's not bad, and it's not just, something that is a personal choice. It actually benefits society, and we need people choosing to be mothers if we're going to have a continuation of our society at all. And I think it's our collective responsibility to support that. So it's all interconnected. It's not just about legal change. It's also about creating a life-affirming culture, support systems like crisis pregnancy centers. Really, we are pro-life, so we support mother and child, and we don't want to see anyone risking their life and risking their health in order to kill the unborn child. We don't want abortions to happen, legal or illegal. But our position is, even if abortions were still to happen, if they were criminalized in the same way that murders still happen, even though that's criminalized, our position is that no human rights injustice should be legal. Period. Full stop.
It's a great talking point to be able to talk to our friends, family, stranger, whoever it is that we're talking to, even a fellow Catholic that like we said, like you kind of spoke about it from the beginning, it's a heart issue, and they maybe have a friend or somebody that has had an abortion, and they kind of don't want to see them in a bad light, because then you have to accept that what they did was wrong and really bad because it's the murder of somebody. So I think it's beautiful to know that, yes, legality could change the minds and hearts of people. And then I guess one last question, or two last questions I would ask. Could you see a potential shift in the law in Canada to become more pro-life from the conception to natural death? Even though, or I don't know if you even want to talk about what the euthanasia bill looks like right now in Canada.
Sure. I'll start actually with the second part about euthanasia. So originally, when it was legalized, it was just restricted to those who were supposed to be at the end of their lives. I think it was in 2021 that Bill C-7 passed. So that changed it. So your death does not have to be reasonably foreseeable anymore. So anyone who has some sort of what they call a grievous and irremediable illness, it could be like a disability that causes them intolerable suffering. Again, with some, they have to be over 18, they have to be a Canadian, but they're eligible now for euthanasia. So that could include people who are dying of cancer. It could include people with ALS. But in some cases, we're hearing things with, someone with diabetes, they might qualify. Really, disability makes you vulnerable. And really, if you are struggling with a disability or illness, you should be actually, and you're struggling, with the will to live, you should be provided suicide prevention services. Instead, the state is saying, actually, we'll help kill you. We agree with you that your life is not worth living, and we're here to help. What's also concerning is that when Bill C-7 passed, it said that, okay, in a couple of years, we'll also allow those who are suffering solely from mental illness, like depression or anxiety, you will also become eligible for euthanasia if your mental illness causes you intolerable suffering. Now, that's been postponed, but currently, unless a government decides to act on this, come 2027, those suffering solely from mental illness will become eligible for euthanasia, which is terrifying because who does not know someone who struggles with mental illness? Again, the status quo is already deplorable because, just because you have a disability doesn't mean that your life isn't worth living. So I would really encourage people to keep that in mind when voting this election to vote pro-life, to find out where your candidate stands on these issues. Now to address the first half of your question, I don't think we will see legal protection from conception to natural death anytime soon, barring a miracle. Now, of course, the Lord works in mysterious ways, like who knows, like maybe a month from now, we will see people everywhere just wake up and abortion and euthanasia are illegal. That would be terrific. But I think the way things have gone over the past few decades, I think it's going to require a lot more work on our parts, which is okay, Again, this is the Lord's fight and not ours. Also, we saw some people in the United States, for instance, who worked for decades and then passed away before they saw the overturn of Roe v. Wade, which is the case that established a right to abortion in the United States. So we can work for something, even if we don't necessarily see our efforts, bear the fruit that we're hoping for. It, takes a lot of laying of the groundwork. And we're doing this not just for ourselves, but for our kids and our grandkids. But that said, I think it is quite possible that we could see pro-life legislation passed. The example I mentioned earlier, criminalizing sex-selective abortion. Unfortunately, our MPs voted against doing so. But the vast majority of the Canadian public is in favor of criminalizing sex-selective abortion. There was a poll done that showed that 84% of Canadians think that this should be illegal. 84% is like a vast majority, and like politicians would be like, yeah, like this is something that people are united on. So I think that we really just need to see courageous pro-life leadership in Parliament. Someone who's not afraid of our very pro-abortion media, mainstream media at least, and is willing to go head to head and say, actually, this is common sense. Actually, I don't think we should be killing baby girls just because they're girls and they're in the womb. So I think that it is quite feasible that we could see some form of pro-life legislation pass. I just think it would require leadership. And again, pro-life grassroots need to get involved and stay involved and not give up. And I think that this is within the realm of possibility, maybe even within the realm of probability. Again, if everyone who's pro-life decided to take action.
Beautiful. And I guess that goes back to the action item for everybody that is listening to, figure out who your MP is, call them up, make them responsible, and then maybe potentially if you're somebody that is able and has the courage, why not run for office? I think sometimes we put that under the rug because we are very fearful. And then I guess one last thing, what's one piece of advice that you would give to somebody that wants to get more involved in the pro-life movement? Have you seen change with, I think it's Choice Chain, where they use the graphic images, or 40 Days for Life, or even Life Chain, where there's like the one day where people can witness, or even March for Life? Like, what would you say to that?
I would say don't wait. I think there's some people who think, oh, someone else can do it better than me. Or like, I have no experience like with activism. And, this is really scary to me. And, there must be someone who's like better at debating or who feels more confident. And no, we need you. We need you. Unfortunately, pro-lifers are the minority in Canada. So we need every single person we can get. We need you. Also, there's different areas of the pro-life movement. Maybe you don't feel called to activism, but you would be great, volunteering at a crisis pregnancy center. Or maybe you hear us talking about politics and you're like, I have no idea what's going on, but you can participate in 40 Days for Life in Hamilton. I will plug 40 Days for Life for you, Anna, because when I first started doing activism, like everyone, I was scared. I don't think it's easy to be out on the streets sharing an unpopular opinion. But the great thing about 40 Days for Life is that you're praying continuously and simply ask for the peace of Christ, and a supernatural peace will come upon you, and the Holy Spirit will protect you. And it is a really uplifting feeling to be there praying for an hour. So I promise you that even if it seems intimidating, you'll find it really spiritually nourishing. And again, through prayer, you can do something that you might think that you cannot do. But my second part would also be, if you do get involved in the pro-life movement, learn and like absorb and like soak up the wisdom of the people around you. The people I mentioned, like Jim Hughes, like Elia Hoffman, like so many other people who I'm not able to name, they are, you know, kind of modern day saints. They are so wise and they're so caring, and you meet the best people in the pro-life movement, people that you want to learn from and be more similar to. So really, it is a privilege, it's an honor to do this work and enjoy it. I mean, of course, we don't want to be doing it. This is a human rights injustice, but like there is no higher, nobler calling than calling people to love and calling people to truth, to really take advantage of the wisdom of the people in the movement, and start out humble. Don't be afraid to learn, and you will in fact be able to pick up skills just like I did, and contribute so much more than you might think that you can.
Amen. I think it was March 25th. I feel like I might be. Yes, March 25th, the Annunciation of Our Lady. That was the day that it was a national preborn. We celebrated the day of the preborn. And I guess the reason why I plugged this in is because we have so many, in the Catholic world, we have so many different solemnities or feast days that remind us that in a way we do have to take action. And sometimes it is spiritual action, like 40 Days for Life. Abby Johnson, I've seen an email that she has mentioned that close to 75% of appointments or no-shows happen when somebody's praying outside. Somebody, you don't even have to be with a group of people. And I think that is so beautiful and so humbling, because sometimes as a 40 Days for Life volunteer or even leader, you're out there praying, you don't know what's going on in that woman's mind, in her partner's mind, of going in and then maybe thinking twice about what they're going to do and walking out. We're not going to know the power that prayer had. A rosary, right? Divine Mercy, worship music. Sometimes we also just sing, and it's very uplifting. And it's like that little sand in that ocean that we don't know what the Lord is doing with that little prayer and that courage that we were able to do. And I guess just to mention, for 40 Days for Life, it is happening now in Hamilton, different cities in the GTA. If you go on 40 Days for Life website, you just Google 40 Days for Life, and then you're able to find your city. There's many cities in Canada. Like we heard there was a Newfoundland, you said, with your friend.
Yes, it's not happening right now, but they do it in the fall.
Okay, so yeah, basically there's a map on the website and you're able to pick and choose where you can go. So it's definitely doable, and it's Lent. So it's definitely a calling for us to repair what has been going on, and also just, sacrifice ourselves in that 1 hour in the bitter cold. It's been really cold this past few days. But it's just that reminder that it's through the Holy Spirit that change does happen. And I think just a little bit more about it. I think it was about a week. I think it was last week. I don't know if it was New York. I don't know, Josie, if you know. Planned Parenthood closed because priests and nuns were praying outside of the clinic. So definitely, again, you just have to volunteer. Like 1 hour. If you know the rosary, you're set. Thank you so much, Josie, for sharing with us your wisdom, your knowledge. And thank you, I guess, as somebody that has seen you so very active, thank you for your yes and choosing this as a career and giving us that example today and motivating us to keep going or to start.
Well, I have to thank you, Anna. Thanks for having me on, and thanks for all of your pro-life efforts as well, and also for the spiritual leadership that you're providing as well, and showing people what it means to be a faithful Catholic. I'm sure you inspire so many people as well, with your love and care and concern, not just for the preborn, but for everyone. So God bless you.
Thank you, Josie. Thank you, everybody. God bless everyone. Have a good day.
You have been listening to the program Via Ruah, hosted by Anna Rivera here on Radio Maria Canada, a Catholic voice wherever you are.